Hello, good evening and salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan the Paul and you're watching Malaysia Tonight. Now, top stories this evening. Unity government wants zero hardcore poor nationwide. And also, Kedah Malaysia Madani Open House turnout exceeds target. The young Di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riyatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah has expressed his happiness and gratefulness that 30 Malaysians safely returned yesterday from Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, which is mired in armed conflict. Al-Sultan Abdullah, in an Istana Negara Facebook post, also expressed his appreciation of the government of Malaysia in the mission to bring the Malaysians back home. He also conveyed his appreciation to the leaders and governments of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, for their assistance in the operation. Apart from that, Al-Sultan Abdullah also thanked the people and mosque for carrying out prayers for the safety and well-being of the Malaysians in Sudan following an armed conflict in the country. Yesterday, 30 Malaysians comprising Wisma Putra officials, Petronas workers and students arrived at Kuala Lumpur International Airport via a Saudi Arabian Airlines flight from Jeddah. On Thursday, Foreign Minister Dato Sri Zamri Abdul Kadir was reported as saying that the Malaysians will be brought home in a rescue mission by the Sudan Ops Special Team, which would be more difficult without the involvement of the young Di-Pertuan Agong and Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim said the unity government wants to completely eradicate hardcore poor in the country, which he described as disgraceful for a country which is rich in resources such as oil and gas. The Prime Minister said among the states that still recorded high levels of hardcore poverty are Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, Terengganu and Kedah.
Dan saya minta kerjasama seluruh jentera kerajaan persekutuan, jentera kerajaan negeri dan jentera milik bandara untuk membantu ke arah ini kerana adalah mengaitkan bagi negara yang punya keupayaan dengan khazanah besar, minyak dan gas, kelapa sawit dan berbagai industri tidak boleh menyelesaikan soal basic kemiskinan di negara.
He said this when speaking to thank the Sultan of Kedah, Al-Abid Al-Karim Sultan Salehuddin Sultan Badli Shah, for gracing the Malaysia Madani Open House in Al-Ustar today. Meanwhile, Dato Sri Anwar said Kedah is a state that is given focus by the federal government with more expenditure allocation amounting to 1.6 billion ringgit for this year compared to the previous year. He said the amount does not include several other measures such as aid for poor schools and clinics, as well as several water supply projects in several districts in Kedah. Meanwhile, Dato Sri Anwar said he was not consulted about giant outdoor billboards featuring him, which have been spotted at several locations across the country. The Prime Minister said the Madani government billboards were erected by a federal department using an allocation that had been approved under the previous administration. Speaking to reporters after the federal government's Malaysia Madani Open House in Al-Ustar, Dato Sri Anwar said these billboards had been put up by government departments using allocations from the previous government.
Saya dah beritahu tak payah kita belanja ini. Dijawab oleh jabatan berkenaan, katanya peruntukan ni peruntukan lama. Dan oleh kerana pertukaran Perdana Menteri dan Kerajaan, maka dipindahkan. Saya faham, tetapi saya fikir peruntukan itu boleh digunakan untuk yang lain.
He added that he had called an immediate halt to work on new billboards under the allocation. Dato Sri Anwar said it is only a coincidence that he had not been informed about it, resulting in him not able to make a decision about them. However, he added that the billboards already up will remain and said that he does not blame the officials involved as they were only continuing an existing policy. The Malaysia Madani Open House, which with Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim held in Kedah today, is hoped to further strengthen the relationship between the Kedah and federal governments. Minister of Communications and Digital Fahmi Fazil described the atmosphere at the Open House as very positive and lively, with the presence of the Prime Minister who took time to greet and chat with the visitors. The turnout for the Open House today also exceeded the target of 25,000 visitors. Fahmi said the Aidilfitri Open House, planned to be held in 6 states, including in Kedah today, had nothing to do with politics. It is organised in order to meet the people and understand their problems. If held in one place, he said, citing in Putrajaya, Sri Perdana, it is difficult for those in Kedah to come.
Saya lihat Yang Amat Perdana Menteri juga banyak meluangkan masa. Beliau tiba ke lokasi sejam awal untuk bertemu dengan semua yang hadir, untuk pergi kemah ke kemah, meja ke meja, melihat semua yang menyediakan makanan, untuk melihat sendiri, dan itu adalah memang style Perdana Menteri kita.
The open house was also attended by the Sultan of Kedah, Al-Amirul Karim Sultan Salehuddin Sultan Badlisha, and Kedah Menteri Besar Datuk Seri Muhammad Sanusi Matnor. Several cabinet ministers were also present. The Malacca government's Aidilfitri Open House for next year will be held on a larger and livelier scale in conjunction with the Visit Malacca Year 2024 TMM 2024. Chief Minister Datuk Seri Abdul Rauf Yusof said the open house will be held in an open area with a garden concept.
Tahun depan kita ada satu kawasan yang lebih menarik dan lebih cantik yang kita akan buat sebagai sempena menyambut Tahun Melawat Melaka 2024. Dia berkonsep garden, lebih menarik dengan pencahayaan, dan insyaAllah saya akan beritahu bila tahu hari ke depan.
He said this when met by reporters at the Malacca government's Aidilfitri Open House at the Malacca International Trade Centre, MITC, in Ayer Keroh today. On the open house today, more than 20,000 people from various ages, backgrounds, religions and races in and outside Malacca had attended the event before it closed at 3 p.m. And like any other festival in this country, the Kamatan Festival should be celebrated together by all Malaysians regardless of background and not limited to Sabahans alone. According to Deputy Chief Minister 1, Datuk Seri Dr. Jeffrey Kittingan, he said celebrating the annual Harvest Festival together could strengthen unity and solidarity among citizens of this country, in addition to creating a deep understanding of each other's customs and cultures. In this regard, he said various programs had been lined up to celebrate the Kamatan Festival. To safeguard the culture and traditions of the Kamatan Festival for future generations, he said the state government plans to get 7 elements of the festival inscribed with UNESCO, including traditional clothes, food and music.
Dengan UNESCO. Jadi dengan cara ini kita akan mengangkatkan pesta Kamatan ini sebagai satu budaya dan tradisi yang dikenali seluruh dunia.
Speaking today, he said the month-long festival is scheduled to be launched on 1st May and will be filled with various events. The celebration will be held in the peninsula, such as in Johor on 5th May, Malacca 6 May, and Klang Valley 13 May. The national level celebration will be held in Sabah. Coming up, Radar to implement development projects worth 1 billion ringgit in Muka. There will be about 60 development projects under Rajang Delta Development Agency, RADA, around 1 billion ringgit in Muka area, according to Premier Datuk Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg. He said this would change the landscape of Muka in terms of economic activities. He added that the Sarawak government, under the leadership of Gabungan Parti Sarawak GPS, is able to provide allocations for those projects as it was able to generate more income.
Kita akan mengembangkan basic economic cake kita dan seluruhnya rakyat akan dapat menikmati dari sudut pembangunan infrastruktur dan juga pembangunan bekalan air dan elektrik. Di Muka tu termasuklah waterfront baru. Lagi didesain oleh engineer W.B. Royston. Kita nak malah waterfront baru kita di Sungai Muka ini. Yang belanjanya lebih kurang 60 juta untuk semua.
He said this during the opening of Pesta Kaul Buka today. He said the whole Buka area will be connected in 2 or 3 years once the construction of bridges are completed. The Malacca state government is encouraging the wearing of face masks in public areas, including schools, especially for those with COVID-19 symptoms, in line with the recommendations of the Health Ministry MOH. State Health, Human Resources and Unity Committee Chairman Wei Hee Sem said the measure was an effort to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the state, even though the daily cases were reported to be declining. He said Malacca will follow the recommendations, guidelines and standard operating procedures (SOP) set or issued by the MOH.
Perhitung muka semalam Menteri Kesihatan baru umum lah. Jadi kita akan ikut yang pusat lah. Kalau ada arahan sekolah kena pakai, Melaka kita akan suruh lah sekolah murid pakai lah. Ya. Kita ikut keadaan Melaka lah. Kalau di sekolah meningkat, kita akan buat lah pengumuman. Ya.
He said this to reporters at the Malacca Government Aidilfitri Open House at the Malacca International Trade Centre, MITC, in Air today. Currently, MOH still encourages the wearing of face masks in public places or if there are COVID-19 symptoms. And in other news, 2 Taiwan nationals who were wanted in a shooting case in their country were detained at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA. Now, both suspects were believed to be members of a secret society as well as members of a scam syndicate in Taiwan. Inspector General of Police, IGP, Tan Sri Akril Sani Abdullah Sani said both men were nabbed as soon as they arrived at KLIA on 20th April from Taiwan. In a statement today, he said the suspects were picked up following a warrant of arrest issued by Taiwanese authorities and their passports had also been cancelled by the Taiwanese government. The arrest was made under the Immigration Act 1959/63. Tan Sri Akril added that the success and the results of the close cooperation between PDRM and the Taiwanese authorities and the collaboration will continue to identify the criminal network linked to the 2 suspects. He said the 2 were handed over to Taiwanese police representatives at KLIA yesterday to be brought back to the suspect's country of origin. Tan Sri Akril said PDRM is always committed to maintaining public peace and order. A 4-year-old boy died at a hospital in Johor Bahru yesterday, believed to have been abused by his mother and stepfather. Iskandar Putri District Police Chief ACP Rahmat Arifin said the child was confirmed dead on arrival at the emergency ward of the hospital, Sultanah Aminah, at about 8:20 a.m. According to ACP Rahmat, the child had injuries to his head, behind both ears, abdomen and both legs. Following that, ACP Rahmat said a couple comprising the boy's mother and stepfather, both in their 20s, were arrested at their home in Jalan Aman Skudai at 1:20 p.m. yesterday. At a statement today, he said the stepfather, who is a security guard, had a previous record, while the woman, who is 2 months pregnant, also has a 6-month-old son. He said the police also seized a handphone and several tools believed to have been used to abuse the victim. ACP Rahmat added that the couple is currently on remand with the man for 7 days until 6 May, whereas the woman for 2 days until tomorrow. Coming up in our foreign segment, airstrikes, artillery continue as Sudan fighting enters 3rd week. Stay with us. The sounds of airstrikes, anti-aircraft weaponry and artillery could be heard in Khartoum early today, and dark smoke rose over parts of the city as fighting in Sudan entered a 3rd week. Fighting between the army and a rival paramilitary force continued despite the announcement of a 72-hour ceasefire extension on Friday, when strikes by air, tanks and artillery rocked Khartoum and the adjacent cities of Bahri and Omdurman. Hundreds have been killed and tens of thousands have fled for their lives in a power struggle between the army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF) that derailed an internationally backed transition toward democratic elections. The fighting has also reawakened a 2-decade-old conflict in the western Darfur region, where scores have died this week. The army has been deploying jets or drones on RSF forces in neighborhoods across the capital. Many residents are pinned down by urban warfare with scant food, fuel, water and power. At least 512 people have been killed and close to 4,200 wounded, according to the United Nations, which believes the real toll is much higher. More than 75,000 people were internally displaced within Sudan just in the first week of the fighting, according to the United Nations. Only 16% of hospitals were operating as normal in the capital. Meanwhile, a ferry carrying thousands of evacuees fleeing fighting in Sudan docked in Jeddah today as countries rush to get their nationals out of the country before before the end of an agreed ceasefire on Sunday. Saudi officials said around 2,000 evacuees, including Iranian citizens, arrived in Jeddah. While several countries have evacuated nationals by air, some have gone via Port Sudan on the Red Sea, about 800 kilometers by road from Khartoum. Iran's foreign ministry said on Saturday 65 Iranian citizens had left from Port Sudan through Jeddah to Iran. Sudan has plunged into chaos and lawlessness since the fighting erupted on 15 April between forces loyal to Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his number 2, Mohammed Hamdan Daglo, who commands the RSF. Burhan and Daglo have agreed to multiple truces since the start of the conflict, but none has effectively taken hold, with each side blaming the other for breaching them. The latest 3-day ceasefire was agreed Thursday after mediation led by the United States, Saudi Arabia, the African Union and the United Nations, aimed at securing a more lasting truce. A huge fire broke out today at a fuel depot in Sevastopol, the main port in Moscow-annexed Crimea, with authorities saying it was the result of a drone attack. Sevastopol is home to Russia's Black Sea Fleet and has been hit by a series of drone attacks since the Kremlin's Ukraine offensive launched last year. The Moscow-installed governor of Sevastopol, Mikhail Razvozhayev, said on Telegram in the early hours of Saturday that the fire size was, quote, around 1,000 square meters and published images of huge clouds of smoke rising into the air. Razvozhayev called on Crimeans to remain calm and in a later post said nobody was hurt. He said authorities had the situation under control and said there was no threat to civilian infrastructure. Earlier this week, Russia said it had repelled a drone attack on the port. Sevastopol, on the Crimean Peninsula that Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014, has come under repeated air attacks since Russia sent its troops to its neighbor in February 2022. Russian officials have blamed the attacks on Ukraine. The decision to ban Afghan women from working for the United Nations was an, quote, internal social matter. The country's Taliban authorities said Friday, a day after the UN Security Council demanded they overturn the ruling. Apartheid. Women have been barred from most secondary education and universities, prevented from working in most government jobs as well as NGOs, and blocked from public spaces such as gyms and parks. And in sports, Kelantan FC fumbles lead to fall 3-2 to Perak FC. Stay with us. But first, Rossi Lieka Lole scored 4 goals as Malaysia claims 5-1 win over Northern Mariana Islands in yesterday's Under-17 Women's Asian Cup qualifier at the Buriram City Stadium in Thailand. Sabah-born Rossi Lieka scored in the 11th, 36th, 80th and 83rd minutes in the Group A match. Adeline Bandi completed the rout in the second half of stoppage time. Northern Mariana Islands replied through Caitlin Chavez in the 30th minute. Malaysia will next take on Thailand on Sunday. Thailand already thrashed Northern Mariana 11-0 on Wednesday. Only the group winners will advance to the next round of qualifying. And Kelantan FC's unlucky streak continues as they suffered a close defeat to Perak FC at Stadium Sultan Muhammad IV in Kota Baru last night. In the action, which they played in front of some 5,000 of home supporters, Kelantan FC was fierce right out of the gates, piling on pressure onto Perak FC's defence lines. The Red Warriors opened up the scoreboard with the first goal through Nuha Marong in the 14th minute. However, Perak found an equaliser thanks to an own goal by Kelantan defender Muhammad Yusri Yuhas Madi in the 34th minute. The Bosgara squad then went on to obtain a hefty lead by scoring 2 goals, each contributed by Luciano Guai Chochea and Muhammad Hafizal Muhammad in the 45th and 67th minute respectively. Kelantan huffed and puffed to equalise but could only manage to score 1 goal extremely late towards the end of the match through Nur Shamil Abdul Ghani in the 93rd. Still in football, Cristiano Ronaldo opened the scoring as Al Nassr comfortably defeated Al Rayd 4-0 in the Saudi Pro League on Friday. Now the win keeps the pressure on in the title race, with Al Nassr 3 points behind leaders Al Ittihad, albeit having played 1 more game. Ronaldo headed home after just 4 minutes before Abdul Rahman Garib, Muhammad Maran and Abdul Majid Al Sulaihim added second-half goals. The 38-year-old Ronaldo also felt he should have had a penalty after the break, reacting angrily after going down in the box. This is not the first time he has let his frustration spill out onto the pitch recently, having had an indifferent few weeks with Al Nassr's pursuit of silverware falling apart, prompting a change at board level for the club. Ronaldo's goal-scoring display comes after Al Nassr had to deny reports that the club's president said he felt cheated by signing the Portugal star on a massive contract. Ronaldo has also faced criticism at Al Nassr recently, with many calling for him to be expelled from Saudi Arabia after he made a controversial gesture, prompting the club to come to his defence. In German football, Bundesliga leaders Borussia Dortmund's title chances suffered a serious blow early this morning after they stumbled to a 1-1 draw at struggling VfL Bochum in the Mini-Ruhr derby with 4 games left to play. Dortmund are on 61 points, 2 points clear of second place Bayern Munich, who will take over the lead if they beat bottom club Hertha Berlin tomorrow. And moving on to golf, Sergio Garcia recalled one of his happy times at Sentosa Golf Club in Singapore to shoot a 7 under 64 and move into a share of the second round lead with Taylor Gooch at the Live Singapore tournament. Garcia and Gooch, who birdied his last 2 holes for a 65, had 36 hole totals of 13 under 129. Gooch won last week's Live tournament at Adelaide, Australia, and was the first round leader by a stroke in Singapore after 64. Brooks Koepka was in 3rd place, a stroke behind Garcia and Gooch. British Open champion Cameron Smith was in a 3-way tie for 4th place after 66 and 2 behind the leaders. Phil Mickelson, who shot a second straight 66, was in 7th place and 3 strokes behind. Mickelson birdied 4 of his first 5 holes but had 2 late bogeys. Garcia, who began his round on the first hole with Gooch in the shotgun start format, birdied 3 on his final 4 holes. Garcia won the Singapore Open at Sentosa in 2018 and has played bogey-free golf in the first 36 holes this week. Today, he hit all 18 greens in regulation. Gooch and Garcia were in a group today that also included Smith, and the trio combined to shoot 18 under. That concludes this edition of Malaysia Tonight. In our top story, Kedah, Malaysia Madani Open House turnout exceeds target of 25,000 visitors. Now, before we go, we leave you with visuals of colourful hot air balloons filling the sky of Wonosobo in Indonesia's Java Island. Dozens of homemade balloons fly at the same time during the days-long festival, which is a years-long tradition to celebrate Idul Fitri in the area. Till then, I'm Brendan Paul. Stay tuned to Berita RTM and have a pleasant evening. Take care.